Welcome back to the Kaspa Silver YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be responding to Bitcoin University's video entitled, "Is Kaspa the Next Bitcoin?" And before I begin, I just want to point out that I highly respect Bitcoin University's content on Bitcoin. It's helped me tremendously on increasing my knowledge on Bitcoin, and I have taken inspiration from his channel to create the Kaspa Silver YouTube channel. Without his work, pretty much my work wouldn't really exist, but obviously we have a lot of different opinions, and over the past year or so I have been trying to get him to look at Kaspa, and even though he came back at me very quickly saying that Kaspa looks like a pump and dump, and I have asked a question in the past and he blocked me on Twitter, and even went as far as to say that I was a confused individual or a paid shill, it didn't really bother me too much because I seriously do not blame him for his quick knee-jerk reaction on Kaspa, because Kaspa is not the first coin to try to pretty much put itself next to Bitcoin and say it's the next great thing. So I seriously don't blame him at all, and I kind of just kept going, didn't really feel attacked personally about it. And after people continuously talking to him and telling him about Kaspa, he eventually unblocked me, and I eventually was able to continue talking to him in the YouTube comment section on my personal channel, and he eventually congratulated me on reaching 10,000 subscribers. So I really do thank you for congratulating me on 10,000 subscribers, and I really do thank you for creating a video on Kaspa finally. And through all this, I was really able to see Proverbs 15 verse 1 come into play. "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." And I just want to challenge the whole entire Kaspa community to practice this verse right here. I know it's very difficult to be able to keep your cool and to not want to come back with the same type of energy that someone might be giving off when people disagree about things or stuff like that. But honestly, if the community can practice this, it would actually help the Kaspa community so that other people will view this community as a community that's able to have different opinions, agree to disagree in a totally respectful manner. And I do want to make this clear that this video is not in any ways to attack Matthew at all. This is all just my rebuttals to his personal opinions on Kaspa. So let's go ahead and get right into it.
Has Kaspa actually solved this trilemma? From my cursory reading of their literature, it looks to me that the end state of Kaspa, if it were to be globally successful, is just a few people, or very few people, running massive archival nodes, thus threatening decentralization.
All right, so that is the first thing I want to start with. He says that few people running archival nodes is going to be a threat to decentralization with Kaspa, and this is just simply not true. Kaspa is built in a way that it does not need archival nodes to prove it is secure. And I want to read this from Jonathan, the founder of Kaspa himself, saying, "Third, because we need a base layer whose trade-offs are centered around the crypto-informed user's needs and ask. This implies in particular, and according to the worldview I suggested above, implementing the default node to skip historical verification, making it an optional operation, one that relies on fewer archival nodes that some entities choose to maintain and make available." And this is what he says in parentheses: "This is the same situation as in Bitcoin, since most Bitcoin full nodes are pruning the data necessary for syncing newcomers. But be advised to not share this info with Bitcoiners. It's going to ruin their day, and by implication, your week." And if you don't really understand this, when you run a Bitcoin node, you are forced to download the entire history of the chain. This is equivalent to about 662 gigabytes. In Kaspa, you only need to download the last 3 days of history, which when I last checked is only equivalent to about 17 to 18 gigabytes of data. But regardless though, when you download the entire chain on Bitcoin, you are allowed to prune what you just downloaded and only keep about 30 gigabytes of data. So Bitcoin encounters the same exact issue with Kaspa, that only a few people are gonna maintain archival nodes because not everyone is going to want to maintain 662 gigabytes of data. My laptop doesn't even take that much storage. So if I was to run a Bitcoin node, I would literally download that onto a hard drive or whatever, and then just go ahead and delete that, discard that, and then keep going with the 30 gigabytes that I need. So Bitcoin and Kaspa suffer from the same problem that only a few people are going to want to maintain the whole entire network on an archival node. And in Kaspa's case, it is 100% not necessary for this to happen. You do not need a lot of people maintaining archival nodes because Kaspa implements pruning. And if you want to learn more about Kaspa pruning, Kaspa nodes, I made videos that went into this topic a lot more deeply called Kaspa Pruning Explain and Kaspa Nodes Explain. And that will go more deeper into this topic. But it is really not true that a few people running archival nodes threatens decentralization with Kaspa. That is not a true claim. Let's go on to the next thing that he says in this video that I wanted to address.
Pre-mine, etc. Kaspa does not have a pre-mine or any initial token allocation to anyone. Unlike Ethereum and Cardano and other trashy protocols, Kaspa runs on proof of work, which is really nice to see. And Kaspa also has a fixed maximum supply, just like Bitcoin. Though one might question whether its forward monetary policy, its future max supply, is as credible as Bitcoin's. Does the Kaspa community take this hard cap extremely seriously? Or could they be persuaded by Kaspa devs to increase the supply, the maximum supply at some point, if there's not enough revenue coming in from transaction fees?
So here he asks two questions. Does the community take the hard cap supply extremely seriously? And could we be persuaded by the devs to increase the supply at some point because there's not enough revenue coming from transaction fees? My response to this is that I am highly against increasing the supply. If devs decide to persuade us to increase the supply, then that is simply because Kaspa failed at gaining the adoption it needs. But that is why tons of efforts are being made to gain that adoption. And he should know that this same issue is within Bitcoin itself, that if there is not enough transaction fees to sustain miners, Bitcoiners will have to make a decision on whether or not they need to hard fork to increase the supply so that there can be some revenue for miners, or hard fork Bitcoin so that it can be more scalable so that it can sustain the miners. But ultimately, I don't believe any of those things are going to be happening anytime soon. And currently, Bitcoin is in a state that it is going to be able to survive as long as the number goes up. And that is not a good state to be in when it comes to proof of work. The whole point of proof of work is so that the fees will sustain miners in the long run. And with Bitcoin, it has a very, very long emission schedule because they know that this is the inevitable and they had to prolong this because they needed more adoption to come into Bitcoin before the inevitable came to be. Kaspa believes that it can solve this issue much quicker, so it went ahead and increased the emissions because they believed adoption would come much quicker, and also Kaspa will be able to handle tons and tons of transactions, and I'll go a little bit more into that later in this video. But ultimately, if you're not against the supply increasing, then you are for basically diluting your holdings, which is a horrible position to take. And not increasing the supply is one of the main talking points for Kaspa because it's following in the roots of Bitcoin. He also addresses the max supply being 28.7 billion. He doesn't really say anything bad about it, but I did want to expound on that. The reason why the max supply of 28.7 billion was chosen was because the devs did not want to make Kaspa's supply so scarce that no one would be incentivized to use it. Now that it is 28.7 billion, the price of Kaspa is going to appear a lot more cheaper. And that also means that if you're wanting to buy goods and services, you will always be required to be putting whole numbers when you're trying to purchase things for the foreseeable future. Not anytime soon would it ever become like Bitcoin, where if you wanted to buy something that was $3, you would have to put multiple zeros after a decimal point just to make something equal to $3, let's say. And Kaspa, if Kaspa ever becomes $1, you would literally need to just put 3 Kaspa so that it equals $3. So that's the reason why the max supply is there. It's to incentivize people to actually use Kaspa and not view it as something that is better to be held forever. This next point is probably one of the most controversial things he said in this video. So I'm just going to play it and then I'm just going to clearly just state my opinion on it and not go too deep into it.
current events. And if I were a Palestinian or a Muslim from any country, and I'm actually not either of these things, is this really what I would want to see if I were a Palestinian, Muslim, or a Muslim from any country? Is this really what I want to see tweeted out by the founder of the world's supposed next global reserve currency? The whole Kaspa dev team appears to be mostly Israelis as well. If we take a look at Kaspa.org, we have Yonatan at the top here, and then all these guys appear to be either Israelis or have studied at some point at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Now, decentralization is important at many different levels when it comes to cryptocurrencies, and having the living founder and devs who are mostly Israelis is not exactly what you want to see when it comes to decentralization, especially when they're constantly tweeting about Gaza. You have to ask yourself, is Kaspa anti-Muslim money? I think it's a good question. I cannot definitively say that it is not, unfortunately. Obviously, the math, Ghost Tag, the cryptography is neutral, and the network is neutral, at least at this point. But the problem is that the founder and devs who determined Kaspa's roadmap have taken to having a very public stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And in fairness to them, if I lived in the area, this is something I would be obsessed with as well, because the conflict would be very close to my doorstep. The problem, though, is when you have a founder and devs who determine the Kaspa's roadmap, and they've taken this very public stance, they also have an outsized influence on the community, which still puts a lot of trust in them. You'll see this a lot in tweets, people talking about the Kaspa devs. This is Entropia saying, I've heard devs say that they will not, and miners will be paid by smart contract fees. My faith is in Yonatan's resume. And this is what you come back to again and again. Some people even claim that Yonatan is Satoshi Nakamoto, which he clearly is not. But let's leave aside your own political or religious views on the Israel-Palestine tragedy for a moment. Even assuming that Yonatan and his devs have zero influence over future Kaspa forks, which it would be naive to assume since Yonatan has a bully pulpit that he could choose to start using at any time, even assuming that they have zero influence over future Kaspa forks, this is a problem because this is something that could always happen. He could, or the devs could, use their bully pulpits for this. This is one big problem with having a living founder. If Satoshi, in fairness, if Satoshi were alive on social media today, it would probably be a similar disaster. Satoshi had the foresight and the humility to leave the project and never be heard from again, and unfortunately, Yonatan did not.
All right, I'm going to end it there. And just for more context, he's talking about this last tweet that Yonatan posted back on October 7th, 2023. And this is not a pinned tweet. This is a post that was created almost 9 months ago now. And Yonatan is actually a very, very quiet person. He rarely talks about things. And in my personal opinion, I'm just going to keep this short, I think a lot of people took this post out of context and what he was meaning, but I'm not going to get too much into the political views of what was going on there. I'm just going to respond with this. The core devs are mainly from Israel, but you should be aware there are over 20 devs now, all working from different parts of the world on different things for Kaspa. Yonatan and Shai are not even coders, but mainly researchers. Their opinions could affect people's decision on wanting Kaspa. But truly, if people let their opinions dictate that, then they do not understand cryptocurrency and its stateless properties. It's no different than your opinion swaying people away from Bitcoin because you might come off as toxic. You do have a pretty good influence on the community, especially with someone like Michael Saylor posting your videos, but I do agree with you that Bitcoin is more neutral at the moment due to its immaculate conception from a sociological standpoint. Regardless though, the question of whether or not Kaspa is anti-Muslim is ridiculous, and Kaspa always and will always be stateless money. Anyone can use it or not use it. It has no censorship properties to it. He also said that Yonatan and the devs can maybe practice their bully pulpit or anything like that, but that is just impossible to exist in proof of work. The same exact issue exists in Bitcoin. Bitcoin Core is what runs most of the nodes for Bitcoin, and there are a group of developers behind Bitcoin Core. They can all of a sudden start trying to propose things that go against Bitcoin's ideas and ideologies, and all people need to simply do is not update their nodes. So no single individual in proof of work has control over their network, no matter what their opinions are, no matter what their beliefs are. It doesn't matter. But Kaspa itself is stateless and is neutral always. Anyone can use it. And I mean, for goodness sake, if we're going to care about people's opinions based on certain things to determine if we should use a currency, it's pretty ridiculous, especially because we know that if we look at something like the dollar is manipulated and used by very corrupt individuals. Should we just stop using the US dollar? I am pretty sure a lot of people are not doing that. They still use the US dollar despite how other people decide to use it. But regardless, we know that the mission of Kaspa, the mission of even Bitcoin, with its properties of a max supply, could reduce a lot of the issues that we have in the world, because a lot of the political divide and a lot of the views that are propagated through media is funded by US dollars that can be infinitely printed. And if we had a currency that was no longer able to be infinitely printed, a lot of people would second guess on trying to use their money to do malicious activities. So I'm going to move on from that topic, but that's pretty much what I believe about it. The second thing he's going to go into is from an article that was written back in 2021 by Jonathan, where he says that secondly, he wants to become rich. And in this article, this is where he is explaining why Kaspa. And first, he says he wants to make Satoshi great again and goes into a lot of technical reasons on why Kaspa. And then secondly, he says he wants to make himself rich. And then third, he goes into more technical things. Now, there was a lot of discussion about this on Twitter. I read this article when I first joined Kaspa a long time ago. And when I first saw it, I did not automatically assume that it was supposed to be a joke, even though a lot of other people assumed that it could be a joke. But after I kept reading into other things, I realized that this second point is not as malicious as it seems. And in my opinion, I think Jonathan deserves any riches he makes from Kaspa, because my word, he spent over 10 plus years of work dedicating his time to building Kaspa. And over the years, many people have used his work in their own research papers that he has come up with to make other cryptocurrency projects and make billions off of that work. But yet Jonathan continued to trying to make a perfect system because he actually cared about fixing proof of work and making proof of work great again, or making Satoshi great again. And a few people even put this section of the article on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT even did consider it as being humorous. He says this line comes after a detailed and somewhat technical discussion about the benefits and innovations of Kaspa compared to other cryptocurrency. Given the preceding context where he talks about the technical advantages and ideological reasons for supporting Kaspa, the mention of getting rich seems to serve as a humorous, self-aware acknowledgement of one of the motivations behind cryptocurrency involvement. It's a common trope in the cryptocurrency community to acknowledge the potential financial gains candidly, often with a mix of seriousness and humor. This helps to keep the discussion grounded and relatable while addressing the broader, more serious implications and benefits of the technology. In summary, while there's serious undertone about the potential for financial success, the way it's presented suggests that it's also meant to be taken with a grain of humor. And this is so true. I mean, it's silly to think that anyone involved in cryptocurrency just wants to become poor. That's stupid to think that would be the case. Obviously, people that are involved in cryptocurrency want to increase their wealth. So I don't even care if this was even humorous or this was not even humorous. I still believe that that line had no malicious intent of it, because there are way easier ways for Jonathan to become rich. But in my opinion, he took the worst path to become rich. And I just wanted to point this out. Someone said in the comment section of the video for Bitcoin University, Satoshi disappearing is a spark of pure altruism within a sea of self-interest. And honestly, this sounds really, really cool and possibly true, but the sea of self-interest did not really exist when Bitcoin was created, because when Bitcoin was created, it was the first ever cryptocurrency project. Kaspa was created in 2021 after years of Jonathan seeing the crypto space and seeing how easy it is for projects to have billions of dollars flow into them, because you can just have VCs and private investors get into your project and fund your bags basically, and be able to come out with being millionaires or even billionaires, because you're able to easily get your project funded. And instead of doing that, I want to read this from the Kaspa wiki. DAG Labs raised overall roughly $8 million. The project's initial business plan was to develop optical proof of work like ASICs and sell and distribute their hash rate. As I described in some Medium posts, I thought of it as a good middle ground between decentralization and sustainability. The fact that this plan failed is indeed a failure of DAG Labs as a for-profit entity. The reason it failed was a combination of the immaturity of optical proof of work ASIC tech and my together with Polychain's assessment that pure fair launch is the only path to give Kaspa and in fact any proof of work coin true chance at growing to meet its goals/dreams. If you think Polychain's support of this is weird or even suspicious, then you probably hadn't had the chance to engage with crypto VCs. As I said in Kaspa Telegram group, crypto space has seen way more bizarre instances than a VC supporting fair launching over no launching. And this was one of the quotes that Satoshi made, saying the operation was successful, but the doctor died. Nailed it. If the patient is a money system, the doctor must vanish because money is a medium rather than a product. It must emerge rather than be purposed. And he's talking about DAG Labs. DAG Labs was a company behind Kaspa that was going to be a for-profit company that was going to be able to profit off of Kaspa's success, and it completely failed. There's an article here back in 2020 where Jonathan Samplinsky goes into how DAG Labs is going to be a profitable entity behind Kaspa. DAG Labs is going to oversee a pre-launch of ASICs, so they will be able to control the ASICs that were going to go out, and also before mainline launch, a DeFi contract will auction out the right to future Kaspa coins. Interested community members will lock some coins, say ETH, on said DeFi contract and receive Kaspa at a future date. These Kaspa will originate from the machines operated by DAG Labs. The coins will flow to the contract, and in exchange, the contract will release the locked ETH and send them to DAG Labs. The money will repay DAG Labs for capital expenses of the ASICs, fund operational expenses of these ASICs, and be saved for future development. This whole idea of how DAG Labs was going to be a for-profit entity completely failed. And Jonathan knew that it will not work for Kaspa if it did not have a purely fair launch very similar to Bitcoin. So in my opinion, this quote saying, secondly, to become rich is showing a lot of honesty, because in the sea of self-interest that the crypto world is today, where it is so easy to launch a coin and be able to come out with millions in literally minutes nowadays, Jonathan chose to not do that at all and launch Kaspa, give it to the community, and just let it grow organically. And that's exactly what happened. And Jonathan pretty much knew this was going to happen because he knew that the technology behind it, the amount of research behind Kaspa could back itself up, and the smart money will pretty much want to run to it. Let's go to the next point.
More than cool new tech or cryptography, it involves a fair community launch without a pre-mine. That's table stakes, and I think Kaspa does that well, unlike almost every other crypto in the world besides Bitcoin. But you also need a slow, organic process of growth in which the coins are globally distributed and spontaneously monetized. And Kaspa rushes this, unfortunately, because its founder and its devs are only human and they're high time preference like the rest of us. So Kaspa launched, it was in November of 2021, and 95% of all the coins will have been mined by July 2026. So this is a much faster issuance schedule than Bitcoin had. Here's the thing, you can only create true digital scarcity once.
All right, and I'm just going to end it there. And I basically say I do not agree with you on the faster emission schedule being a bad thing. The faster emission schedule for Kaspa is probably one of the most genius ideas to be implemented into Kaspa. The reason why it was implemented was because Kaspa was viewed to possibly gain much faster adoption than Bitcoin. When Bitcoin came out, it's the first coin, so obviously adoption would be insanely slow. So you don't want to have all the coins going out, because in that case, Satoshi would have been able to mine like 10, 20, 30% of the supply in the very beginning. But in Kaspa's case, having a faster emission schedule, especially launching right after Ethereum went to proof of stake, allow for a ton of miners that just got disregarded on the Ethereum network to find Kaspa, get into GPU mining, and start mining Kaspa at a time where no one really knows about Kaspa. No one knows that for sure the future is going to be bright unless you dug deep into the research and really just predicted that, yeah, this is going to become adoptable. So you had at least hundreds of people in the beginning mining Kaspa without any certain of the future. It wasn't even on exchanges right away. So, and if you look in the Discord, you will see people there trying to sell millions of Kaspa for literally hundreds of dollars, where today millions of Kaspa are going for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you pretty much have a much more fairer launch. And also it prevented ASICs from coming onto Kaspa, because since crypto is much more adopted now, it would be much easier to create ASICs for a coin nowadays, because you have mining companies involved, you have big exchanges involved. Now, because of this faster emission schedule, we're in 2024 with almost 84% of Kaspa mined, and a major mining company has announced that they're mining Kaspa, and they only have about 15% left of the supply to play with. If we also look over here, there is absolutely no Coinbase, no Kraken, no Crypto.com, no Binance US, no OKX. None of these major exchanges have Kaspa yet, because Kaspa was fair launched. They didn't receive any allocations, and for them to get coins, they would pretty much just have to buy Kaspa itself. So pretty much the idea was to get a lot of the Kaspa in the hands of retail first before the big institutions and all of the other bigger players can actually get their piece of the pie in Kaspa. And now we have a major mining company mining Kaspa for the first time ever. This company is mining something other than Bitcoin, and they only have about 15% less of the supply to play with. So pretty much it's just going to create more scarcity because there's not that much left to mine. And so the faster emission schedule, in my opinion, was the most genius idea to do. And it's crazy to see that it's pretty much been playing out really, really well. Also, this creates a much better emission schedule for miners, because with Bitcoin, every 4 years you have a 50% cut of revenue, which is very bad. Whereas in Kaspa, you have a very nice seamless transition of a less rewards every single month. So the variance isn't as crazy when it comes to Kaspa, because the rewards are dropping very nicely every month to equal one halving every single year. And because of the 50% cut in Bitcoin mining revenue, it has been a shock to miners. There has been over a 100 ehash decrease since May. So almost 100 ehash has just gone away in the security of the network because mining revenue has just fallen so badly. So I don't agree with you thinking that the faster emission schedule was bad. In my opinion, I think it was a lot better idea than a slow emission schedule like Bitcoin.
And by the time that Kaspa came on the scene in late 2021, Bitcoin was already a globally distributed asset with powerful network effects and a market cap above 1 trillion. That is a powerful first mover advantage that I don't believe that Kaspa can overcome. Bitcoin already has a global brand and Kaspa does not. Bitcoin is already being plugged into the financial system everywhere from savings, retirement accounts, corporate treasuries, ETFs, futures, options, etc. Bitcoin has so many companies in the ecosystem that make hardware wallets. It has exchanges. It has retirement products. It has everything you could imagine. And by contrast, Kaspa is a very, very new, very niche product. It's only been around since 2021. Kaspa is also not battle tested like Bitcoin. Kaspa hasn't even grown large enough yet to warrant attention from nation state attackers like Bitcoin has. Will Kaspa be able to survive when it's attacked? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. The question is, do you feel lucky? I certainly wouldn't sleep well if I stored my savings in Kaspa rather than Bitcoin. Now,
well, I sleep very safely storing my savings in Kaspa, and I'm still buying Bitcoin as well. But when it comes to the argument of Bitcoin's just been around longer, it's bigger, and this, and that, Kaspa community obviously knows what we're up against. Nothing is built overnight, and we know that Kaspa is not going to just come in and just take a trillion market cap in one night. And I just have to say, first mover advantage is not enough. To be honest, the question is, first mover advantage to what? Money? I highly disagree. Bitcoin's current state is quite far from being able to achieve money for the masses. Layer 2, Lightning Network, Fediments, and Liquid are not Bitcoin and are not positive for Bitcoin becoming money. Now, yes, Bitcoin has a head start, but you and I both know when it comes to technology, there is no reason that a first mover advantage, such as a typewriter, is completely free from being taken over by something like the computer. And I just want to show you this clip of Saylor when he was asked, what is the best argument against Bitcoin?
Back to Graham's question, what is the best argument against Bitcoin? And what would it take to convince you that it's not, that's,
well, the
you don't
best
have an accurate
argument against
grasp on the
Bitcoin
true-
is you've got a better monetary network. And if you had a better monetary network, then all the smart money in the world, all the smart people with money would be using it, right? So Bitcoin has accumulated the most physical power in terms of electricity, the most computer power in terms of hash power. It's accumulated the most economic power. $700, $800 billion of real money has been invested in it. It's got the highest market cap, worth 1.3, 1.4 trillion, and it's accumulated the most political power. Hundreds of millions of people who are passionate about defending it. And so, how do you know it's not working? Well, if someone came along and launched something that was more popular with intelligent people.
And I firmly believe that is exactly what we're seeing with Kaspa. Kaspa was launched with highly intelligent people, and it is becoming very, very popular each and every day. And like I said, what does Bitcoin have when it comes to first mover advantage? I do not believe it has a first mover advantage in the money race anymore. It is viewed as a digital gold, and I believe Kaspa is ahead in the race of becoming an actual usable money system. All right, and now I'm just going to address the last 2 points that I think I should talk about. So let's give a listen.
Now, the Kaspa community seems always quick to offer olive branches to Bitcoiners, and this is a gesture that I do appreciate and assure us that they're not here trying to usurp Bitcoin's place with their new coin. Common phrases you'll see in my discussion with them and with other people. I don't see Kaspa as a competitor to Bitcoin. They'll also say that Kaspa is silver to Bitcoin's gold. And I would say that the latter phrase is especially unfortunate. Kaspa is called Kaspa because Kaspa means silver in Aramaic. And so technically Kaspa is being marketed as silver to Bitcoin's gold based on its very name. Unfortunately, that's the same silly marketing slogan that Litecoin has been trying to use for years. And this is what silver to Bitcoin's gold has looked like for Litecoin. So I'm not sure why you'd want to take this similar tack and label Kaspa as silver because
So I'm going to go ahead and explain the silver narrative because I think this just gets misunderstood time and time again. And I say here the silver to Bitcoin gold narrative is because Kaspa is trying to show what real digital silver should be like. Silver was used more than gold in the real world, hence why it is believed that Kaspa must be used more than Bitcoin. That is it. It has nothing to do with subdividing. LTC never achieved the status of being used more. Kaspa just put in 1 million plus transactions for the first time on June 30th. And you could see right here the transaction count for Kaspa on July 1st. It was 1.53 million transactions were conducted. And then if we look at June 30th, 1.13 million transactions were conducted. And if we're looking at something like Litecoin, in the last year, it has not been able to do millions of transactions at all. You could see currently right now as of recording, the number of transactions in the blockchain per day is currently sitting at about 180,000 transactions. So really, when we're looking at Kaspa and the narrative of silver, it only means that silver was used more than gold. And now that we're in a world where there's a digital gold, where it's not going to be used as much because of the way it's created, we believe that Kaspa can be digital silver because we believe Kaspa will be used more than Bitcoin. And Bitcoin only puts in about hundreds of thousands of transactions per day. And Kaspa, as you can see, is capable of producing more than 1 million plus transactions per day, and even more than that as it continues to get developed. And lastly, I want to talk about his point on people saying that we don't see Kaspa as a competitor to Bitcoin. This is my reasoning for that. I say the reason why I say I don't see it as a competitor to Bitcoin is because Bitcoin cannot even compete with what Kaspa is doing. I do not believe Bitcoin is money, nor use it as money. Bitcoin is advertised as digital gold, and you make videos about taking loans against it, not using it. Becoming money is a market that has still yet to be tapped into, and I believe Kaspa is ahead in that race now. I believe coexistence will remain for a very long time, and I have said if Kaspa was to overtake Bitcoin, it would need to take over a decade, I believe. It's a free market thing that is not 100% predictable. And here's a video of Bitcoin University telling people that they should be using Bitcoin and taking loans against it to be able to buy anything. And he is known for also saying, I'm never selling any of my Bitcoin, which only just reinforces the belief that digital gold is what Bitcoin is today. People really don't want to use it. People rather just only hold on to it. And I myself practice the best I can to be using Kaspa as an actual currency. Now, obviously, it won't be used as a currency in every single country of the world as a primary thing, but I believe Kaspa can be adopted much, much more than Bitcoin in third world countries as time progresses. And people that have currencies like the US dollar, currencies that are not depleting as fast like other currencies, we will just probably be using stable coins that are going to be built on Kaspa, or just still saving money in Kaspa, because for a currency to be a currency, it needs to have store value properties and medium of exchange properties. And I believe Kaspa does both of those the best. For people that seriously need a better currency so that they can use it to buy goods and services, Kaspa is going to be able to do that. For a person that wants to just have a better store value than their current currency, I believe Kaspa is going to be able to let people do that. So I think to be a currency, and this is something that Bitcoin University says, you need store value properties and medium of exchange properties. And I believe Bitcoin is going to be the worst when it comes to medium of exchange properties, and it's not going to be better than Kaspa in those terms. So in summary, I don't think the video was all that bad. I just believe I had a different opinion on everything. And I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of what was being talked about were very subjective, and they're just opinions. There was actually nothing really credible against Kaspa itself as a network and what it's doing. In my opinion, he views it as a type of money. He views it as a competitor to Bitcoin, and he believes that all monies converges to one, and so that means between Bitcoin and Kaspa, it's going to be some kind of war. And I don't know if I'm going to make it that serious, but either way, from what I take from this video is that Bitcoin University truly sees Kaspa as a work of art and simply just has a few concerns that are just opinionated, and I believe over time he might shift his opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here, and if you want to support the channel, consider maybe joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. You should be able to see a join button that will be right next to the subscribe button on my channel so that you can join and become a member. This is pretty much the same thing as becoming a Patreon member. You'll get access to the private Discord where you can get a lot of other things. So if you want to support me, those are the ways you can do it. Or you can just simply leave a like, watch all my videos all the way through, and I'll greatly appreciate that as well. Please leave any question or comments down below. Please keep it as nice as possible. Let's not be disrespectful and try to be respectful as possible to all points of views. Thank you again for watching. And as always, don't be average, be different.